As advertised yesterday, there will be some rescheduling in terms of the session today. Ross, do you want to just run us through?
Yes, so thanks, Ian. And I took the agenda and kind of updated here on based on how it could go today. It could go even faster, though, to be perfectly honest, as we did a lot of the GFS discussion yesterday. But I didn't want to make anybody feel rushed, knowing people reading the papers again and thinking about it. So we'll start the day with the GFS item, and I've estimated up to an hour for that. We have a quick item in the approval slot to bring back a couple of BCs that Augustina worked on materiality. Shouldn't take too long. Then we're moving into the application group discussion, which will take us to the break. We had an hour on the agenda for that, so I've left a little time after the break to come back for that. The program director's update, I've put 30 minutes. I think that's probably a bit of an overestimation, to be honest. There's really not anything major to discuss, but left time for questions if there are any, because we've done a good job of achieving what we set out for this meeting. Then we do have the new member announcement, which I put 30 minutes. Again, that might be optimistic. So we've asked for lunch to be ready from 12 to 1. If we're moving ahead of schedule, there is a possibility we'll end the meeting a little bit early and do the members only session before lunch, but we'll see where we are at the break and adjust for that. And with that, that's the plan for today. And let's get into it and see if we go faster or if we achieve the plan. So with that, just wanted to say one last thing, and that's we made it. So on Sunday morning when we started the week, I thought to myself, wow, this is going to be a long week, but I think we're almost there. So it's day 6 of a long week, and thanks everybody for all the hard work on the forum earlier in the week and the meeting itself.
Great. Okay. So we'll move into the first item, which is the strengthening the linkages between IPSAS and GFS. So Joao, if you want to come forward. I mean, as Ross. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, so as we had the introduction yesterday, I thought the slides were at the beginning. I'll just wait for. Okay. Right. Okay. I just asked to Joao to put this slide in because I just thought it's worthwhile just reminding ourselves, the rest of the week during the board meeting, obviously we've been in delivering global standards mode. At the beginning of the week, we were very much in that space, but also looking at inspiring adoption and implementation in the forum. And now we are in the space of advocating benefits of financial and sustainability reporting information. And this is about joining it up and making sure that the high quality assured information at entity level is then useful and used at the top level. So I think it's just in terms of the session and what we're trying to do, I think it's important just to really locate that in the context of the overall picture of what we're trying to do. So, you can do all you like in terms of delivering global standards, but actually if the information is not useful and not used, then we've been wasting our time. So Joao, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So after yesterday's overall session on of this project, I'll ask a little bit of your patience to bear with me. I appreciate we are already on the sixth day, like Ross said, and we'll dive a little bit on the details of the mechanics of the materials that the task force has developed over the last several months. And after that explanation, happy to receive any suggestions. Like yesterday, we already started to receive some, and to better communicate the work to our constituents towards the approval of the exposure draft at the December meeting. So, and with this, we'll start, as I said yesterday, with the gateway document, which is the dashboard. So I ask the board members to go to agenda item 1.6, which are those standing agenda items. So I'm not going to put on there, but we can go through. So I'll just hold a few seconds for everyone to be on page 1 of that dashboard. And as I said yesterday, the mechanics that I'm explaining now to the board will be at a very robust at a glance for constituents to understand before diving into the exposure draft and the other supporting materials. So I believe that everyone is now on the page 1 of the dashboard, and then so that page 1
is item 1.6.
Yeah,
just to be clear.
So, yeah, the page 1 basically has a summary of the current status of alignment of IPSAS standards with the GFSM 2014, and that this is now also a difference, because until now we have always referred to international statistical standards, whether it was the System of National Accounts, whether it was ESA or GFSM 2014. Right now, this dashboard is only focused on the international statistical standard, focus on the public sector. So it is really focused on GFSM 2014. And it shows the current status and also shows as a kind of a forward-looking perspective, taking the opportunity, like Ian said yesterday, that the GFSM 2014 is under revision. And I'll explain a little bit later those projects and so on, but it shows possibilities of alignment or from the IPSA standards or from the GFS side when they have some research projects that can bring alignment with IPSA standards. So overall, we have here a kind of a positive message that after all, there is much more commonalities than differences. And some of the differences that are there identified in red are mostly fundamental differences that are related to the specific objectives of statistical accounting. So where it is, I would say, almost impossible to change them because it will break their own conceptual consistency. But still, there are still areas of improvement, and that's where I'll explain in a few minutes. So going towards page 3, where we have by IPSA standard, the current status. And just to highlight, like Ian said yesterday, the legend, so the greens and reds are related only to recognition and measurement requirements. So if there are presentation differences, and there are, it's not impacting this classification. Presentation, disclosures, it's not impacting because the focus is exactly recognition and measurement and where can be done in that area. Then going forward to page 4, here we have kind of a link with the work that the IMF is doing with the update of the GFSM 2014. There is a list of the research projects that are now underway. And with the classification, or at least from staff side, we could see that they could make some alignment when developing the options for the changes in the GFSM 2014. One of those options could be as a resulting in aligning with our guidance. So as you can see, it's quite it's the majority of them. So there are here, from our perspective, quite a broad way of strengthening the alignment between both sets of standards. And I've put also a column, the last one, which is now still blank, with the future results, whether we got that alignment or not. So it's kind of a forward-looking. I just wanted to highlight one important topic, just for kind of an example of these 36 projects that are here, which is provisions. So, as you may know, the system of national accounts does not have provisions because it's only one-sided. It's not a symmetrical transaction. But GFESM is open, at least from a research perspective, of bringing provisions into their own framework, which would be kind of a lot. And by doing that, it would bring risks into the balance sheet even before they materialize. So in order precisely to strengthen the fiscal analysis, fiscal policies, and so on. So this is just a research project. I'm not saying that it will be done or not. So it's just kind of something that the statistical community will discuss. I don't know, Ian, if you want to say anything, because you know that's
the one elaboration I've suggested to João for the next iteration of the dashboard is that we should actually just have a sentence or two against each of those projects, which explains the opportunity that we see, because we're promoting this table with the GFS Advisory Committee and the IMF work teams. And I think if we communicate the opportunity that we see for them to align more clearly, then that will strengthen the argument, or at least highlight the argument. Then, as João says, it's up to them whether they make the decision or whether they don't. We don't have a control over that. But I think at least through this exercise, if we clarify the opportunities that we see, then that's helpful. We might just pause at that stage to see if anybody's got any comments. I mean, this very much is a management tool, and it will be real time as those projects progress. So there's the sort of two aspects that we're trying to handle. One is actually really firming up on the mapping between our standards and the current version of the GFS manual, the 2014 manual, and then it's also trying to influence the forward development of the GFSM for what will become GFSM 2027 or 2028, depending on how the project. I know Steffi wants it to be GFSM 2027, but so I don't know if there's any observations, and I might just ask Mariana if there's anything.
I think you summarize what it is, the way that the CHIPSAC is working, and we are open to, and if it is not decided to include the provisions into the manual as a provision, we need to do something like a bridge between the accounting and the GFS, as we are planning to do with the leasings and GFS accounting. Yeah.
Thanks, Mariana. I mean, I think the main thing is this does very much promote the dialogue. So I don't know if there's any additional comments. Obviously, we gave you a lot of the context yesterday, but this is just actually moving into more of the detail at the moment. Karen.
I very much like the dashboard. I think, as we've talked before, I think it is a useful way of summarizing what's going on. I think, as I said yesterday, I think it's really important to be clear about what actually is in here, and I still haven't got past IPSAS 1 on this, where actually the heading is recognition and measurement, but all the description in the table is about presentation differences. So I think we do need to be really clear about this, because I'm still a bit concerned that we're saying that we're aligned on IPSAS 1, yet in the CP we're saying that they're fundamentally different. So I think we need to be clear why we're saying certain things, and at the moment I'm struggling to square that circle in terms of a common narrative. So I think we just really need to be really clear. So it may be that we're using the same financial statements and so on, but that's a presentation point, not a recognition and measurement one, and that's the heading on the column. But it still needs to kind of reconcile with the discussion in the consultation paper, where we're actually saying they're fundamentally different frameworks, and therefore you can't have financial statements presented using a GFS type explanation. So I think we really need to make sure we've got clarity about what we are explaining here in terms of differences, because in my mind it's still a bit conflated, and it might only be IPSAS 1 where there is that issue, but we do need to be entirely clear. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I think that's helpful feedback. I think it's one of the things that I know Ross was keen on, that actually we work on the messaging, because I think there's been too much of, the frameworks are for fundamentally different things, and it's whether you're kind of taking a glass half empty or a glass half full. So I think we were conscious actually we needed to develop the messaging, and it's useful feedback that's we've not got there yet at the moment. Ross.
Yeah, I think that's a really helpful kind of observation, because we've been working on this table for a long time, and if it doesn't resonate with you on the very first one you go through in detail on that specific standard, I think there are a few tricky ones where they are presentation standards. And we're trying to positively show where things align and where it's useful, but those ones that don't relate to specific recognition and measurement on their own, maybe we need to just think about a different presentation, and instead of trying, there's not really an alignment on presentation at all. We're not trying for that. So maybe we just message that, these are presentation standards. The recognition and measurement requirements are another standard. So if you want to know about that, go look there. And then we think about providing information on where items from IPSAS 1 might give you information that are useful, but you might need to go to other standards to think about your accounting policies, because it's presentation only, something like that.
Yeah, thanks. So I think, actually probably, as we've said with these papers, they are work in progress, but actually we wanted to engage the board at this stage rather than bring a fully completed package. So I think that's very helpful. And I'm thinking, Karen, that actually we may want to use you as a guinea pig in terms of, as we develop the, the positioning and the comms around this. Actually, it would be really helpful, because obviously through UK experience, you're more attuned to kind of how the data can be used, and if it resonates with you, then I think that will help. So that would be useful if we can do that. But it's good to have that feedback at this stage. Mariana.
No, this is a very good observation, and in the task force, in the last meeting, we were discussing this issue with the presentation, and this was something that Sean was explaining yesterday, that our aim to have access to the data, the granularity, the granular data, and this is why it is not a fundamental difference, because we are assuming that we will have access to the granular data. Okay, thank you.
But I think all of that comes back into we just need to collectively work on the messaging to make sure that we've got that right. And I think, what we're hoping is that actually through this process, we can get the messaging right from both sides. So what goes in the manual as much as what goes in these proposed amendments, as well as what goes around it, and so on. So yeah, but I think it actually, even through the conversation so far, I think it's actually progressed our thinking on what we need to highlight and so on. So, okay, João, move us on.
Yeah, thanks for the suggestions. And so moving forward, so moving past IPSAS 1. I'll just finish the dashboard with one good example. Please, the board go to page 8, where we have IPSAS 4. Which is a kind of a good example that the task force has discussed, and we are talking about here the effects of changes in foreign exchange rates. So basically, both sets of manuals require the recognition of those changes, the effects of those changes. And that's why we said, okay, recognition and measurement, it's the same because it's based on the value of the exchange rates at the time of the transaction, at the time of the recording for the publication of the financial statements. However, the task force said the location of those changes is different. So in GFS, it's considered other economic flows, and in IPSAS, depending of the type of the transaction, it may impact statement of financial performance, may impact net assets equity, and that's why for them, for the GFS, they didn't care much whether it is in one place or it is in another, because what was important is to get the accounting data that it was already processed and then just move it to the different places where they should be for GFS side. So once again, the importance is the access to the accounting data, because this means that the statisticians don't need to find those numbers in other places. It's already in the accounting system. And with this, I'll finish the dashboard. I don't know if the board has any more things to say. I don't know, Mariana, do you have anything? No.
Okay, thanks for just having highlighted on that page. It's ironically, it's the only one that doesn't actually have the revised heading at the top, which says recognition and measurement already aligned. But anyway, any further comments? Okay, that's good. Take us on.
Yeah, thank you. So, as it is in the slide, the next part, the second part of this non-authoritative guidance is related to the exposure draft that staff brought for the first time, the work that the task force did. And the task force thought that it would be worthwhile to have the same approach that it was done with IPSAS 33, where basically IPSAS standards were aggregated according to groups of standards. They are there, those 8 groups, to help facilitate the location of the transactions according to those groupings, and for preparers and statisticians know more directly and faster where to get that information. I'll not go down through the exposure draft. That's not the purpose today, but I thought I should ask the board if the board is happy with the approach that the task force took. Having these groupings, we have also an introduction, and then the groupings have a question and answer format that helps guide both the preparers and statisticians that may read that guidance. Like John said yesterday, that for them it is useful to understand how the numbers are compiled from an accounting perspective, to better understand if there are any need for any adjustments or not for statistical compilation, and if there are any further suggestions on that proposed approach.
Okay, any comments on the general approach being taken before we get into the draft material? Andrew.
I do just worry about the consistency of the wording or the questions that appear through. And I think sometimes we've oversimplified the answer that comes out, and it almost misleads the answer. You know, for example, I've looked at one on intangibles where we talk about where is it aligned, and we say, well, you know, GFS's market values under IPSAS 31, you can elect fair value, therefore there's no differences. But I think that's the exception from an IPSAS perspective to use fair values. We would typically more use cost, but nowhere does that actually come out in the text. Now, I appreciate that might be the detail the task force is working on, but I think we just need to be more structured in the headings and the guidance that we are giving, that it is clear at what level we're giving this guidance. Do people still need to look into the underlying standard? Because to me, I think we haven't quite got that mix right yet in terms of what I'm seeing.
Thanks, Andrew. So I think what I would suggest is actually, I think if you have a particular suggestion on the wording on that, then I would feed that over, because Joao is actually going to have to work through a lot of detailed feedback at the moment. And I think if we have your perspective on how you would expect to see it from a financial reporting perspective, then we can work that in. And I would rather have that at this stage than come back later, because there is a lot of work that's got to be done. And I think it's also part of the perspective that you are taking as to whether this is an exception or whether it is actually just an acceptable choice, because I think that's one of the things that we need to communicate is, from an accountant's perspective, if you want to achieve alignment, these are the choices that you need to make. So I think that getting that balance right is going to be important. So, you know, and some of it may just be a matter of taste, but I think if we can see how you would prefer to see it worded, then we can work with that. And that's really what we're trying to get to at the moment. So I'm not sure if it was Camira or Camira, do you want to go? And then Karen?
Sure. Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Joao. I find the drafting very useful in terms of the content, but I would just suggest to improve a bit more the way it is presented. As of now, in IPSAS 22, I fully agree with the grouping that you are proposing. What worries me is that people might have difficulties in navigating because it's not in the numbering order, and then also the ways it's presented now. I know it's consistent with other standards in form of question and answer, but the point is it's very repetitive. So I was thinking if you could think about a tabular format and maybe put in an index of what are the standards that are inside each of the groups, so that maybe it's easier for the users to identify the information. And the other point is, for the summary that we present at the individual standard level, can we also, even if it's a bit repetitive information, but can we put something like a summary, what you are putting already in IPSAS 22, if you can include that also in the small table that is already in the comparison between the IPSAS standard and the GF, because that could be helpful, because if someone is already in the standard and looks at that, then already he will get all the information without needing to go to the IPSAS 22 standard. So, but thanks.
So again, Camira, I think if you can provide some suggested drafting, I think that would be really helpful, because although, as you say, it is repetitive because it's the same questions, but that's the whole point, that it is the same questions, because basically there are only 3 variants, which is either it's aligned in terms of recognition and measurement, or recognition and measurement don't align, therefore you need to collect extra data, or recognition and measurement are aligned, but the data is presented in a different place. So therefore, you need to make sure you've got the underlying data separately collected in order to use it. So there's only 3 variants on it, which does mean, yes, style-wise, it is a bit repetitive, but it's important that we get the questions and we get it as accessible as possible. Back on that?
Yes, it's just a matter of presentation. So use a table and just put in the headers the questions, and then below in the rows the standards, and then you have all the information without needing to repeat the same question many times. So yeah, thanks.
Okay. Again, I think it would be helpful, just because part of as well is we're sort of working within the kind of confines of what our presentational conventions are and so on. So yeah. If you can have feed that back to Joao offline, that would be really helpful. Karen.
Thank you. And I think this is just building off my previous comment, because some of the alignment is about recognition and measurement, and some of it is about presentation. So some of the questions are about, is the presentation aligned? And some of it is about whether the recognition and measurement is aligned. So we do have some variance on the questions, but I think if you are trying to access this, you might be wanting to look at what are the accounting policy choices from a recognition and measurement perspective, and then the presentation choices as perhaps something separate. I don't think there's any easy answer to this because there's a whole heap of data in here, and I'll give it some further thought as well. But there is that kind of question from a user accessibility point. What do we think people are going to be most interested in, and therefore how can we present the Q&A in a way that helps people navigate that in the best way? Is it by standard? Is it by something else? So I don't know. Maybe you need a database that you can interrogate that is something that is offline to this on the website that gives people those options rather than a long document. But I'm happy to give that a bit further thought in terms of thinking about that. The other thing for me was building on Renee's point from yesterday about its location in IPSAS 22. I hadn't really gone through and read that again, but I do take the point that Renee raised yesterday about being kind of clear why this IG is located in the standard to help people again locate it and not miss it in terms of what the objective of the standard is. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. Ross, back on that.
Maybe on the first part of your question, Karen, this came up in the task force quite a bit as we worked through things. So the intention is to highlight the recognition and measurement differences because that's the main areas from a data perspective you need to align. But we did get to several areas where there's unique presentational requirements between GFS and our IPSAS standards. And it was Sahe and the task force who pushed us to be clear to highlight those, but also say that just because there's a presentational difference, you can still use the recognition and measurement data. So that's why you see some talk of presentation there, because Sahe was concerned in particular that those in the GFS community might perceive those differences of presentation as meaning you can't use the accounting data. And she said, from her perspective as a compiler of statistics, the presentation doesn't get in the way of using the data, and it really makes their life easier if they have transactional based data can use for the statistical models. So she wanted us to positively capture when there were these differences, that doesn't mean it's not aligned or useful data. So again, it's more of a communication exercise because once the statisticians decide they're going to draw from the accounting data, they still have to do statistical processes to use that data, including data manipulation. But the statistics are much higher quality and easier to do when you have that transactional data than starting from scratch and having to go and do surveys and other statistical processes to develop the data source. So again, this is all coming back to what we did at the very end of the task force meeting. We all sat together and we talked about what's the purpose of we're doing this work and what are we trying to communicate? And this is going to be part of the communication at the end so that the statisticians, accountants, and others who might want to be using this data have a common understanding of how the data can help for other purposes. So how the IPSAs are useful for more than just financial reporting. So again, we're still working on that narrative and we'll bring that back in December when we bring back the full package. But again, that was a challenging discussion in the task force. So helpful to get your feedback on those areas where from presentation, it's still kind of sticky. Because that's what we're trying to bring through.
Karen.
I think that's really helpful. And I think if the purpose is around sort of the recognition and measurement, you really want to promote that first from a comms point of view. And it just is maybe bad luck that IPSAS 1 is a presentation based standard. So you kind of get to that one first. And so, as you say, I think it is about communication and how you get the messages across best. But if it's about recognition and measurement, then we really need to be clearly promoting that. So that's what people see first in there, because I completely get your point and the rationale for doing it. So no, that's been very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that message has come through very clearly that, you know, the high level messaging that we were discussing needs to really go right the way through the document to make sure that it's clear. And it, you know, I mean, it is the people that will go to IPSAS 22 are likely to be the accountants that are wanting to do this, but equally we do need to make sure that it's accessible so that it also works for the statistical community as well. It's about trying to get a meeting of minds and an understanding. So, Patricia.
Thank you. Some point, I could not understand one conclusion about the content because I think it's more general. The conclusion was if the entity use market approach, it attains the market price. But I think this conclusion is so restrict because fair value, considering cost approach or income approach, is the estimation of the price too. Only one point for the group consider, because if I consider only market approach, I consider the assets measured at market price only for common, non-specialized assets. Thank you.
So the point I'm trying to get over is that the GFSM will talk about market value, right? We have a basis for valuation, which is fair value with techniques underneath it. And generally, one of those may well be market value, so that essentially it is the same data that we're trying to get over. So, you know, there is a message there, which is a very important one, that the label might be different, but actually really the underlying data is that if you're using that technique. So, you know, I think what this is trying to do is actually get that message over that there is a compatibility of the data, and that's the way that you would approach it. And you know, we can argue the detail, and I don't want to get into that at the moment, but what it's trying to do is actually say, look, this is good quality data, you can use it. So that's you know, rather than focusing on, well, we don't quite do this or whatever. Mariana.
This is on the practical side, and the what we do is the fair value of the accounting is the best estimation most of the times of the market value. So if you have the market value better than in the, maybe the market value is more accessible for the securities. This is something that is but for the rest of the assets, if you have to choose, you need to choose what it is available. And for us, is better, and is as Ian said, is more quality, guarantee more quality to have the data from the accounting, and makes us more consistent in the framework, in the asset liabilities and net worth that is key for GFS.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you see some of the estimated data and the way in which that's done, because there isn't good quality data in the way that Mariana, you know, this is a real improvement. And that's what we're trying to concentrate on getting over. But I guess, you know, I mean, it does go to the point in terms, Andrew's point, in terms of precision of language. But you know, really and truly, I think we've made some significant strides through IPSAS 46 and being clear about how measurement actually works in the public sector. And actually what we're trying to do here is get the statistical world to actually really understand what it is that we've done and how it can help them. Okay, João, move us on.
Yeah. Great discussion. Thanks for that. So now we are moving to the last part of this non-authoritative guidance, which are related to a comparison with the GFSM 2014 tables. Here just two notes. So the first one is a change of title. So far, we have been using this comparison with GFS tables since IPSAS 42. We are going to modify the titles, proposing to modify the titles of those standards to IPSAS with comparison with GFSM 2014, and also making some editorial changes to make it consistent with the rest of the comparison with GFSM 2014 tables that the task force is now producing between IPSAS 1 and IPSAS 41. So the objective in the end is, once this project is complete, then in the future, they will see the old standards having the same format, content in all comparison with GFSM 2014 tables as a complete suite of package of those tables. I just want to highlight before finishing my presentation that these three parts, they will be explained. All these will create supporting materials, the at a glance and other materials on how all these will be presented, including the explanation of those terms, what we mean by recognition, measurement, the tables, the types of groupings, what are the impacts. So it will be kind of a different type of at a glance that we have been used to do from a staff side, but given the discussion that you are having here through the board, I think it really warrants to have that effort, and perhaps even involving some of the board members that have been making these type of suggestions to make sure that we got the tone right, the message right, and that we can get the most of our constituents' comment letters. Thank you.
Are you looking for any further comments, Sandra?
So any comments on those comparison tables and also on the appendix that we've provided, which is kind of the example on how the three parts are combined all together. But much of that appendix we have already talked, the comparison with GFS tables and the exposure draft. So I'm not sure if there are any residual comments.
Claudia, you want to come in? Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm wondering if Joao could explain why we, in the example for IPSAS 14, explain neither IPSAS 14 nor GFSM 2014 require the recognition of something. I'm wondering why we have something in it that both standards don't require something. It seems not very straightforward, because I think we have a lot of other situations which in both standards are not requested. So I'm wondering why we have decided for a few standards, maybe that's only one example, to have in declaration what it's not in it in both standards. So I understood all of the other presentation which says they are the same, there are differences, but this time I don't understand what is the reason behind.
Thanks, Claudia. With that question, I'll take that question to the task force, and we'll come back with an answer to you if that works right now. No, Mariana?
No, it's...
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think we need to have a look at a specific example on that, because I'm not clear actually what, okay. Jonah.
Yeah, just on the practical side, and I know I talked about taxonomy the other time. I don't know whether we can have guidance on the chart of accounts, because they appear to focus on their coding. The way they do their coding is different from the way we do our coding. If we agree that that separation is inevitable, then probably the guidance we might have to give our accountants is whether we can have separate ledgers. You use the same underlying data, but then because the coding cannot be the same, then we provide that guidance. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. Thanks for that question. So yes, the task force also discussed that. So as we all know, we don't have coding in IPSAS standards. So basically, it's up to the jurisdictions to develop that coding for financial reporting. But the GFSM 2014 does have a coding. So what we thought is having the counting data there and with in the counting system. So the importance of developing a multidimensional chart of accounts that have for the same transaction, the coding developed by the jurisdiction for financial reporting, also using the coding that is already in the manual for GFS, and many times other types of codings that may include budgeting, programs, and so on, in order that the very same transaction have all that codings, because that would help then to access to use that very same information for the different purpose that can be used. So in this case, the taxonomy takes preeminent importance, and thanks for raising that. And basically, but that would be kind of outside already from the work that we are doing. But once again, that guidance that we are planning to put in at a glance will call out and the importance of multi-dimensional chart of accounts. The World Bank has produced one in the Polestar program that basically calls out the importance of that. Yeah.
In fact, this is a key issue for the technical assistance we give to the countries, to the jurisdictions. So it is, but not from the point of view of IPSAS, because of this coding is not there. But maybe this is we can discuss in the task force to make mention that the chart of account or the multi-dimension chart of account is key to have this type of easy way to withdraw the data from the accounting. Thank you.
I mean, this is where the work goes in, needs to link in with what's going on in the IMF at the moment, because I think there is really a question about this is a big project in terms of if you want to start doing digital taxonomies and stuff like that. This is not something that we are, funded, equipped in any way to actually do, and there's no way that we can commit to that. Plus also there are complexities in the public sector compared to the private sector, because there are different variants on the ways in which jurisdictions use IPSAS directly, indirectly, inspiring, and all that kind of thing. So it's actually a lot more complex. And I think the question is, from the IMF point of view, what is the appetite and the potential in terms of that detailed guidance? Similarly, what would be the appetite from the World Bank in terms of updating that Pulsar document? I mean, I would hope that they would do that, but that's not in our control. It's not our piece of work to actually do. So I think we've got to be very careful that we can do what we can do, but the detail is part of, that's up to IMF in terms of what they want by way of compilation guidance. If they want to start to support the development of, that taxonomy type of approach and so on. It's not in our control. So I've got Abdullah, and then I've got Karen.
Thank you, Chair. And I will start from the point for the appetite for the World Bank and IMF. I'm looking at this exercise as an exercise to promote the implementation. It's not necessarily a standard setting exercise. So this is what I would suggest for the task force to start tagging on the appetite from the World Bank and IMF, because when I'm looking into jurisdictions, they want to find their path and to convert into accrual. The first thing they look into is to build their chart of account, and I guess that is the backbone of their conversion cycle. If we can align, get some support in that from the World Bank, IMF, I would see this as a success out of this whole exercise. Looked into many jurisdictions, they finalized their first stages of conversion. And the first thing they worked for chart of account, where they ended up with, is the GFS manual, and they built their chart of account from that perspective. Why don't we have that alignment? And since everything is digitized, we could share something from where we did in my jurisdiction, where we had some alignment. Of course, there were some differences into looking into the coding, trying to interpret it, and looking into the measurement part of it. But my point is, chart of account is something that I would really urge the task force to look into and tag on that appetite point. From it would be a win-win for us and World Bank and IMF. Thank you.
Thanks, Abdullah. I'm going to go to Ross. I think we have to be very clear about what the task force can and can't do. We're part of an ecosystem, and the practical implementation of this is not for IPSASB. It is for our partner organisations to work on that. They have the money and the resources to allocate if they want to. The task force cannot do that. Ross.
Yeah, well, kind of continuing that thread, I agree with the sentiment of the points, but we've got lots of things around the IPSAS that talk about the importance of this. So if you go into Pathways to Accrual, there's already encouragement to think about your chart of accounts, think about a multidimensional chart of accounts with GFS. There's the Pulsar guidance within that document that Ian's already highlighted that's been developed. There's already a lot in this space. The problem is, if you go to the standards, there's not much there that give people the encouragement to think about this. So this is why the approach we've taken is what we've taken, is in that non-authoritative guidance, you can start to prompt the accountants to start talking to the GFS community and really think about how to make the accounting information useful for more than preparing financial statements. And again, I can't emphasize more, as we talk to more and more countries, they're not looking to adopt IPSAS just for financial statements. They want this data and they want it to be useful for multiple purposes. So this board having a little foresight and helping people understand there's non-authoritative guidance, in the non-authoritative guidance, that if they think about how this accounting information is useful and talk to their colleagues in other parts of the public sector, they might find a lot of support for their accounting reforms, and it doesn't impede the financial statements you're going to prepare and the accountability and transparency. And again, I heard it from Sung Jin yesterday, who actually does this in his job and has worked with the Korean government on bringing together accounting and GFS. And I would encourage everyone around the board who has those contacts, go back to your jurisdiction and talk to the groups that are doing this and ask them what data they're using. Do some homework and find out if this would be helpful, because again, this isn't a technical exercise. It's a communication exercise we're trying to do here, and getting the statisticians to understand that there is this accounting data, and on the accounting side, that with some thought about accounting policies, you can get better data that's useful for multiple purposes. So even beyond GFS, but GFS in particular is the main one. So I just want to emphasize that, because it's not that we haven't done work in this area for the past almost 20 years at the board in various non-authoritative documents outside the standards. It's about, it doesn't seem to have pulled the communities sufficiently close together.
Thanks, Ross. Yakuba and then Mariana.
Thank you, Chair. So reflecting on the issue with chart of account and coding, I just would like to highlight that the tentative project we discuss later in the week were related to that. If we went for a project on taxonomy, that can help to provide all the needed information so that the coding will be easy. But unfortunately, that project wasn't written in our program. So it is not, it cannot be a work for the board at that time. So maybe in future work, we can envision in what way we can go for XBLR taxonomy as an example. So we will have the material and all the necessary information to do the coding as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Yakuba. I mean, I don't think anybody disagrees that you know, that sort of approach and getting a more standardized approach wouldn't be a good thing. The question is actually, how do you fund that? How do you resource that? And, you know, when you look at the amount of time and resources that's gone into development of digital taxonomy by the IFRS Foundation, that's been absolutely huge. And far more resources than we have for standard setting. So that's why we're, you know, it may, not to sound over defensive about it, but we're just trying to sort of do what we can within the resources that we have. And, you know, I would certainly hope that actually if we do this piece of work and then the GFSM is updated, that actually that does provide a much firmer platform, because it's really why I think, you know, going back to Ross's point about what's happened over the last 20 years, the evolution that we're making here is that we talk more generally about GFS frameworks, whereas what we've done is actually take the thinking a stage further and say, well, actually, you know, whilst there may be, you know, there's a system of national accounts, there's a European system of accounts, actually the international standard for public sector statistics is the Government Finance Statistics Manual. So if we make the bridge into the GFSM, actually that firms up on the bridge then. And, you know, you mentioned earlier on in the week, the point about the fact that Pakistan has actually gone the other, you know, has actually strengthened its systems precisely because they will produce GFS data. So actually there's not that much further step for them to actually use those systems then to do accrual-based reporting. So there's actually benefit on both sides, but by really trying to actually firm up on the links, which is the strengthening links point of view, actually we make the argument much firmer on both sides. There really is, you know, then it becomes a combined you know, I suppose movement push, you know, because both sides really have a much clearer view. And then I think that starts to make the case of actually then you can demonstrate a business case for the investment, because you've got clear mapping, clear case, and then actually as countries start to adopt and so on, they will put new IFMIS in that can do both. You know, which is a much better place to be than trying to retrofit it, which, believe you me, I've tried that in the UK and it's hard work. Mariana.
No, I think it's a great idea to focus on the chart of account, but you can take advantage of the work done, as you mentioned, the work done by GFSM to have already the chart of account in a aggregated way, because it's the one that you can use for everybody, but then the particular cases is country by country. They have, when they start together, as the example of Pakistan, for example, Brazil, they start together to do IPSAS implementation with GFSM. You can build the chart of accounts from the beginning, align with budget formulation, budget execution, accounting, and GFSM, and projections. So you cover the cycle, the fiscal cycle that I was mentioned yesterday. So you have everything, but it's something that it could be in an implementation guide. And right now, in the IMF, we are focused our division on the manual, but I challenge you to I will pass the message to my division, to my department, but is for now we are focused on the change or update of the manual. But if we are doing this type of work in each country, if they request our help, we start with the institutional table, chart of account, and all the how you convert your data, even in cash or accrual, to the GFSM presentation. So it's about to have the connection and to ask for the help. And I think it's a good thing to have already the GFSM codes there. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think, you know, it is the art of the possible, but I think, I can very clearly, I think the more countries actually say this is really needed, the better. Okay. So I think we've had a good discussion in terms of the kind of positioning of the project, also very clearly communication being really important, not only in terms of the project as a whole, but I think, we clearly need, as the task force firms up the mappings and the detailed content, we need to pay attention to that overall presentation. Is it consistent all the way through? I think that message has come through. I think, the point that's been made about the precision of the way in which the language is used is really important. So I think, getting, Andrew, your input on that, as well as the input on the kind of higher level, I think is really important, because it does need to have integrity, absolutely needs to have integrity, and get the messaging right and so on. So, but I think the value, we've seen the value, potentially through the conversations we had yesterday and today. Any final points before we move on to the next item? Okay, that's good. Well, thank you very much. And it is a combined endeavour. So, thank you very much to colleagues from the IMF. John Verinder isn't with us any longer, but John's putting a lot of effort in, as well as, colleagues from Ministries of Finance. I can see Florian's online, and Lindy from the South African Treasury. So a lot of effort going in, and thank you very much, everyone, for supporting this initiative. Okay, Ross, so I think we're now on to application group, is that right?
Just a quick stop with Augustina to pull up a couple of BCs on materiality, and then we'll be on to the application group. So we're just going to need the next slide deck.
Hi, everyone. We're coming back on the definition of material. Specific, there were some BCs to just show you the revisions that were made to address the decision from the board to retain the footnote as exposed. And with that, I have 2 slides only. And the first one just shows that in part 1, where we're amending the conceptual framework, the changes are being made to that footnote to bring it back to what it was exposed. And the BC below, it just reflects the footnote above. And I'll just give you a few seconds or a minute for you to read it. Thank you. Apologies. I don't know if we can fix the main screen to bring back this slide, the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Ross.
So we can also give members a chance to have a final look at this in detail in the editorial process. So I don't think we have to wordsmith right now, but I think the purpose of bringing it back is just to show members what was originally exposed has been put back in, so that you can see that and agree the BC. So I don't think we need to do the wordsmithing now.
Okay, so
yes, and I will be seeking some help from TAs or board members that want to participate on the tutorial process. So if you have comments, I can take them right after. The next change is just reflecting a similar BC that we have on part 2 to IPSAS 1. Here there was just a location. I moved BC 47 up because I thought it was more relevant, and then I reflected the retention of the footnote, but happy to take it through the editorial process as well. I know it's kind of hard for you to now to read this and give me comments. Thank you.
So I think, the thing to do is make sure we've just circulated these slides and then, members and TAs. Okay.
Yeah. I'm happy if there's some board members that after reading it, you have comments. I can quickly share with you the document itself and we can work through it now, or you can send me comments. The idea would ask, if possible, to get comments back by next Thursday at the latest.
I think people are tired at this point in time, so I think it's better to actually send comments through. Because I think there's a risk that, we just need to actually just slow down a bit on that one.
So what I'll do is I'll share the document with all of you, and I will just simply ask if you can give me your comments by next Thursday. So I'll share the document as I go back. Thank you for your time.
Great, thanks, and thanks, Agustina, for turning the comments around. But I think we're sort of at that. We're all tired. Let's just sort of have a bit of a sit back and reflect rather than trying to fix things today. Yeah, exactly. We have an editorial process. Exactly. So I think we're on the application group. IPSASB application group. Karen.
Just a very quick question. Does everybody know that about the IPSAS 33 that we're dealing with that separately? I know that I was part of the discussion, so I know, but I didn't know whether everybody knew.
Thanks, Karen. So just to update everyone, yesterday we looked at the IPSAS 33 wording and we saw there are more amendments that need to be made. So thank you to Yakuba, Renee, Andrew, Patricia, Karen, Lesna, and Camilla, who all sat with me for an hour and a half yesterday trying to work on the wording. The good news is we all know what we're trying to say. We just don't know exactly how we're trying to say it yet. So what I plan to do is use the editorial process to lock up that wording and make sure that we get that nice and tight. And we'll do that over the next week or so to make sure, and I'll work with those 5 or 6 members that I listed to make sure we get the wording right on that.
Okay. Edwin, over to you.
Thanks, Ian. So I will now go through the activities that occurred during the third quarter for the IPSASB application group. So first, I'll walk through what has been done so far. So we formally launched a group in July, on July 10th, and we did that via press release and also on social media. So you should have seen a push on LinkedIn to see that we have launched a group. We have also finalized the submission website. So right now, if you go to the IPSASB website and also under support, there is a little box where you can click to get to the submission page. We held the first IAG meeting on the 13th of August, where we talked about the issues that I'll be going into in detail in a bit. And for the rest of the year, our plan is to set up a database of the submissions that we are analyzing. And then we're also developing information videos to further push the website and also the group. So I don't think we showed the full video, but at the forum, we would have showed a clip of the video that we have developed so far. So the video consists of Andrew explaining what the group is and how to submit an issue. So when we met in August, we did look at one significant issue that we thought we should bring to the board. And the issue was a question on whether an equity instrument can be measured at COV. And particularly, we know that this was discussed when COV was developed, but then the situation here was that there was an investment with 27 shareholders. And essentially, the 27 shareholders entered into an agreement that nullified many of the typical shareholder rights. So the shares did not pay dividends. The shareholders actually could not sell the shares. And also the voting was not proportional to the share ownership. So the agreement actually specified that the ability to appoint board members essentially rotated from shareholders to shareholder. And the reason why they set up this structure in place was really so they can get access to the mining of salt in the jurisdiction. So the question was, because these shares do not come with the typical shareholder rights, and especially because they can't sell them, would carrying these shares at fair value really make sense? So unfortunately, when we were posting the papers for this meeting, we didn't actually get all the facts from the submitter. So as you can see, we didn't actually come to a conclusion. But we have since followed up with the submitter, and we will bring this issue back in the next meeting after the IAG talks about it in Q4. So the other issues that we've looked at was we also revisited the IFRIC agenda decision from June on financial guarantees. So if you recall from June, the IFRIC released basically a flow chart that talked about how you would scope in a financial guarantee under IFRS. And back in June, we've discussed whether we should incorporate that flow chart into a staff Q&A that we've issued for contingencies and financial guarantees. And the IAG came to the conclusion that yes, we should recommend to the IPSASB that the way to deal with this issue is to update the staff Q&A. The only one change that we are recommending is that in the flowchart, it actually explicitly refers to IFRS 17 or the insurance contract. And because under IPSAS, there is no standard on insurance, if we were to follow the hierarchy in IPSAS 3, the consideration of IFRS 17 would actually come at the end. So right now, the recommendation is that we incorporate the flowchart, but amend it so that the step that talks about insurance contract is the last consideration. And what we propose to do is to include this in the staff Q&A. And because the staff Q&A is not a board document, staff is recommending that we work with the IAG to get this updated and issue it once we're happy with the changes. So I'll pause there for comments to see if the board agrees with this approach.
Andrew, as chair, is there anything else you wanted to add to that? Ross.
I just want to say to the IAG, great job. And it's nice to have this mechanism now to deal with these types of queries when they come in and give our stakeholders a way to feed in their issues from a staff perspective. That's really helpful. And now that we're creating this log of issues, it will over time give us data points when we're having discussions like we had earlier this week with national standard setters on where there really is noise, because now there is a true mechanism for people to come and bring issues to us. So I think this is going to probably become more prominent over time and longer agenda items. And as we know from discussions, sometimes we want to put everything here, but when the right items are put in this bucket, it's a really useful use of a task force and staff resources. And I just wanted to thank Edwin for his leadership in helping get this set up, and Andrew as well for, his strategic thinking and guidance on this, and, working together with staff on this. So I think it's off to a good start. And as I've been talking to people, as I've been traveling, I've heard a lot of interest in this. And so please make sure you let people in your jurisdiction know about this. So not everyone's aware of it yet. And when I do share it, everyone's quite interested. I show them on the website where to find it, and they, promise they're going to send us lots of things to think about. So.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. I think the other really important thing is from a point of view of maintaining the suite of IPSAS, that actually in the past we've really been doing this in catch-up mode, whereas actually this really gives us the mechanism to do it on a real-time basis. And I think that is a really important development going forwards. So really pleased that, because we have had to do this catch-up exercise on previous IFRIC pronouncements, whereas now we've actually got a way of actually kind of really, dealing with that on a go-forward basis. So I think that's great, alongside being able to pick up questions and queries. And I guess in due course, those will result in annual improvements potentially as well. But we'll wait and see that. Edwin.
Thanks. So I'll end off the session by touching on a few issues that we looked at that we're not proposing to go through in detail at this meeting. The first one is we did get a question on concessional financial guarantees, and essentially this issue was addressed pretty much exactly by the AG paragraphs that we've shown on the slide. So we've responded to the submitter with those references, and they were fine with that. The other issue we've looked at as a group was there was the final IFRIC agenda decision on hyperinflationary economies, or IAS 29. And the IFRIC was asked to confirm whether all the factors in paragraph 3 of that standard are exhaustive, and whether they have to consider all of those criteria. And the IFRIC basically came back and said, well, yes, it says right in the standard that the list is not exhaustive, and entities should apply their judgment and look at all the criteria in the list. So the one thing to note is that IPSAS 10 actually has the same wording as well. So we would also land on the conclusion that the list is not exhaustive. And because it was so clear in the standard, we didn't think that there was a need to address this in detail. Okay. So that was all the update I had for this quarter.
Thanks, Evan. Camira, sorry, Dave first, and Camira, go for it.
Thanks. It's quite good what I have seen and how the group is starting to work in the analysis. I just as a minor suggestion, because in the future we will get, hopefully we will get much more requests. If we could, I know that we are trying to anonymize the request, but if we could still provide some general information about who was the respondent in terms of, was it the Ministry of Finance? Was it, what kind of entity was it? And the region, because then if the topic is very interesting, we can identify it is the same problem is occurring in other regions or similar entities in other countries. Another point, if we can keep track, I imagine you have that, what was the exact date in which the request was submitted and when we close it, so when we send the reply, so that could help us in the future as a board to identify how fast we are able to reply to some requests. So thanks.
Can you leave those points with staff, Camira, because I think we have there are some data privacy issues involved in that, and I think we probably need a bit of time to think that through. Dave?
So Camira, I was going to make a related point. I was just going to say that I think the board has done this the right way. I think to Ross's point, this will pick up next year. I think as more and more people know about this, I think these sessions will be longer than 15 minutes or so. I think we'll have more and more issues, but I think the board's done this the right way in that we've really taken the time to think about how to set up this group, and we are taking the time. I hadn't thought about your issue, but we do need to think about your issue. So I think by getting a few issues to begin with, we can tease out the right way to present these on the website. There were some intricacies in the issue we were discussing back in August that we need to work on and decide how to present those back. So I do think the board set this up in the right way and really kind of doing it step by step, or developing the foundation, then building the frame, and then the roof. And I think it will turn out really well. And hopefully by next year, we'll start getting more and more issues, and we'll have a good process in place and know exactly how to deal with everything.
Ross, just adding to that for me.
Just want to add on what Dave said. I think, and Camira, you've got a great point. And the question is the data privacy issue, but don't worry about the issue of tracking that, because we do get that information at staff. So we don't get it completely anonymous. We anonymize it. So we'll know if a lot of these are coming from one jurisdiction or another, but maybe we think about how much we can share without reaching that data confidence. So we can think more about that.
Yeah, thanks. I think this is, it's important that we get this right. Transparency versus data privacy. We just need to sort that one out. Karen, then Adrian.
Thanks very much. And it's great to see this and good that things are coming in. So it's quite exciting that this is building. My question was really around the point that you raised, Dave, which is about the presentation of this on the website. And it is definitely early days yet, but I wondered whether you'd thought about what that might look like on the website, or whether that's something you're going to come back and discuss with the board in due course. Thank you.
So Karen, we thought about it. We'll bring it back probably in December as to what we're going to report on. And I'll just allude to the first query we received. Just made us think about what type of information we should respond to, how much detail we should go into responses. But it's something that the team has to work out, and we will bring it back to the board in December as to the level of information to give.
Adrian.
Thank you. I'm happy to see that it started, but it started slow, and we might probably increase in the very near future. With regards to data privacy, I think, well, we have a solution that we adopted for, I mean, the responses to CPs or EDs, and we have generic criteria such as regional or nature of the respondent. We don't provide the names, but we know where it comes from. And also, I might have missed something, but do we intend to publish a compendium of the decisions that are made by the IEG on the site? Yes. Okay. Good.
Okay. So, I mean, I think all of these are good questions to be raising, because it's actually about how we build this and how we make it work going forward. So, yeah, I think watch this space as it develops. Okay, so thank you, Edwin. Thank you, Andrew, and the group. I think, it's clear this is a really important development, really timely. I think going back to the comments made in the forum, and the increase in adoption and use of IPSAS, it all very much fits in with that change in focus. So it's, echoing Karen's points, really great to see this actually now up and running. Okay.
So we are running a little bit ahead of schedule. So we're going to move into the program technical director's report next, and then we'll likely get to the new member announcement, to coffee break. I've got the clicker here. Leah's told me the slides are up. I think that's the signal. So what I think we'll end up doing now, revising the revised schedule from this morning. We'll go through the program technical director's report. Unless there's any major hiccups, we'll then do the new member announcement, and we'll have a coffee break. And after the coffee break, we'll come back and we'll do the members only session, which should take us to around lunch. So I'll ask those who aren't participating in the members only session at the coffee break to please pack up and be ready, and we'll restart after the coffee break around 11.
And I think lunch is available from midday.
Yes, lunch will be in the same place we've had it all week. So even if you go early, please come down and join us for lunch at noon. Yeah, let's see where we get to, but on to the program and technical director's report. So as we get started here, the first slide you'll see here is a beautiful landscape of Portugal, downtown Lisbon. And this is what it would look like if I had gotten my tour of Lisbon with Joao. This would be me and Joao walking down the streets, seeing the beautiful sights of Lisbon. And he even threatened yesterday he's going to give me this tour, so I'll stop making this joke. And I told him, please don't, because it gives me something to talk about that lightens the mood a little bit. So we'll see. If we come back fourth time to Lisbon, there's a possibility I'll get that tour, but I doesn't think we'll fit in this schedule. I did hear that Edwin might get it next week, as Edwin's taking a bit of a vacation and Joao will be here. So Edwin, you'll have to let me know if it lives up to the hype. So I just do a quick summary of the approvals. So we approved the work program consultation, final pronouncement to update 33, and definition of material, and bom trabalho. Good job, everybody. And thanks, Joao, for teaching me a little bit of Portuguese, and apologies to anybody who speaks Portuguese by how bad my pronunciation is. So with that, we have achieved everything on the work program that we set out. So there are no major adjustments to the work program to list, which is great. We've had a very aggressive year, but we've been meeting all the metrics. And with that, taking us into the check-in meeting, we will be using the check-in meeting October 30th. We'll be focusing solely on the upcoming approval of the climate standard and tangible natural resources. And we'll be bringing back the full drafts with all changes coming out of this meeting reflected, and any final instructions coming out of this meeting. The first attempt at addressing those will be done by the check-in. So we'll be looking to kind of have a real good flip through the final drafts of both, go through the issues and talk it through, and we'll dedicate the whole check-in meeting for that. So just please make sure all members are available and can join, because I think that will help focus us and set us up for smooth sailing on the December meeting. So again, I think Portugal's a well-known seafaring nation over many, many years. So it's setting us up for a smooth trip through the approvals in December. And with that, that brings me to any questions anyone might have in the end of my presentation on the work program. And just thanks to everybody for really working hard in a difficult week with the forum and the board meeting. And I think we've really made a lot of progress on a number of items, but in particular, the ones we're looking to finalize in the next couple of meetings. And kudos to the staff as well for excellent work in balancing preparation for the forum, which took a significant amount of time, but also still delivering very high quality papers that allowed us to make progress.
Yeah. Echo those thanks, Ross. So are there any questions for Ross then in terms of that report back? Karen?
Just a clarification following the discussion, which I think was yesterday, or it could have been the day before, around the materiality for sustainability and how that's going to appear on the work programme, given that it's not a board paper, but a staff paper. So I think we were talking about different colour or something, but just to clarify where you think you're going to land on that.
So I think it was Claudia's point on that, and maybe Renee as well came in. I think we'll use a different color. We just have to think about how exactly we want to show that on the work program. And I think it is important, even though it's a non-board project, that we show it, because it will take staff resources. And we want the work program to show things that take staff resources. So again, we're moving into that new space because we haven't traditionally had staff time allocated to non-project work. We're starting that with application group and PIRs, so maybe we'll look at that coloring, but we just need to think about it. If you have a suggestion, we'll take it away as well.
Don't know that it's a suggestion, but I think it's such an important piece of work that, you know, it's something that the board absolutely, in my view, needs to engage with. So it does feel like it does need to be part of the board program, albeit that it might not be something that the board has to approve at the end of it. But certainly, I think it's going to need board time and board input to kind of get where we need to be. And I don't know whether there's been any previous precedents around that where you know, board input has been required for a particular activity or project, but hasn't required board approval, because, you know, who knows, if depending on where we go to in terms of looking at the suite of material, there may be more of these coming up, and so I think we need visibility, not just from a staff resource point of view, but from a board input point of view as well.
So it is a little unique, but not completely different from what we've done. So we did have in the collaborative session yesterday the start of a discussion with a couple of board members particularly interested in this, and we've set up a time for a follow-on discussion in November for everyone to go away and read the education material, think about public sector adaptation, Welcome for any other board members who want to join that to participate. And I think we'll have a short update on that in December, back from that group and with staff. And maybe at that time, we'll come up with more of a plan on what the forward engagement plan is with the board. But I don't think it would be a significant amount of plenary time to have a quick update from that group on the work. And then anyone with a distinct interest in the work can be invited to join the discussions outside the board. And any items by exception that need to be highlighted to the board can, and along with the document for review, but that we wouldn't be going through the document in detail in the board session, just to save plenary time. We can have the discussion later after we've gone through it, but I think there's going to be a balance between how we use plenary time and how staff document time goes, and we can talk about that and encourage anyone. I think the date was November 19th. It's been set for the first discussion, and if you're interested, let Karen know and she'll make sure you get the invitation and the background reading. But we've got lots of time to start to figure this out, and we don't have to have the exact answer today.
Thanks, Ross. Any other comments? No? Okay, well, thank you. Oh, sorry, Claudia. Your yellow hand actually blends very nicely with your green background. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I remember when we had the going to the work program documents, there was something mentioned about some regional roundtable, which was expected to be going along with our publishing of our exposure of our draft from the work program consultation. Do you have any dates already, or do you plan to send us such dates when we have figure out which regional roundtable it could be?
So we've got a couple of that we're working on now. I think the only firm date we have in Q4 relates to Focal, where we'll be having some discussions, and I think Dave will be there, so I'll let Dave come in on this one. But I think the majority of these roundtables will actually be in Q1 2024. Sorry, 2026. You can tell it's been a long week. Yeah, so it'll be Q1 next year. And we'll try and put a year on it. Dave?
So Claudia, the dates I have is we have one in Riyadh for the MENA region on October 1st. We have one for Focal that Ross alluded to. I believe that's October 16th. And then we have one that's a smaller European one that we do on October 30th in Madrid. And then to Ross's point, we've got them in Q1 of next year as well, but we haven't set dates for those.
So obviously, I think that's very much a watch this space, and you know, obviously, if members through their networks have opportunities to, you know, engage with constituents, I think you know the events can be small and large and all that kind of thing, and I'm sure staff will also, you know, we'll have a bank of material that can be made available depending on the nature of the event. That you can use because it is a really important opportunity to get out there and engage. So, you know, as and when you see opportunities, please contact the staff team, and we'll try and you know, we'll try and get the message out there and get as much input as possible. Okay, so we now get to the point where I can make some announcements in terms of board reappointments and also new members for 2026. So I'm very pleased to say there are two board reappointments for next year. So one is Noyati, which is great. And then the other one is Andrew. So congratulations to both of you on those reappointments. And just to say, they were actually guinea pigs for the new process that actually all board reappointments, now there is a re-interview process which has been introduced. So thank you for being the guinea pigs there. Then in terms of the new members, firstly, you will have noticed one of our new CAG members, Dina Attia, is online at the moment, and Dina will actually be following in some illustrious footsteps in moving from being a CAG member to being a board member next year. So that has happened on a couple of occasions with Nima and with Karen. So congratulations, Dina, for that. And then we have 3 new board members joining as well. Judith Apaza from Bolivia. We have George Scott from the United States, and George was at the forum earlier this week. Some of you may have, I don't think he's still here, is he? Oh, you're there. Oh, okay. Congratulations, George. And then we have the final appointment for next year is Alex Tejera from Brazil, who some of you may remember came and presented in Toronto a little while back in terms of Brazil's plans in terms of picking up climate-related disclosure standards. So I think, again, a very good addition. So congratulations to everybody on those on joining the board next year. I think all good additions. Inevitably, we were hoping this week that we would have some news in terms of appointment of my successor. IFAC is running that process. It is ongoing. There is no news at the moment, and I can't tell you when there will be news. So you will know when there is an answer, but at the moment that's ongoing. The other point to note is that the deputy chair appointment is an annual reappointment, and that is pending input from the incoming chair. So again, no news on that. So apologies for that. So I think with that, that brings us to the conclusion of the board business for this week. I think, thank you very much to board and TAs. It is a hard week, in terms of inputting after the forum. I should also say thank you to staff as well, because they put a huge amount of work into the organisation of the forum and then into preparing all the board papers. So thank you very much, everybody, for all the hard work. As Ross said, I think it has been a good meeting, and there's been consistently high quality input all the way through the week. So that is really great, much appreciated. And with that, I bring to a close. Sorry. What? Oh, yes. Remiss of me not to once again say thank you to OCC. I think we've come to expect Lisbon being a great location, but literally we could not have done it without the support of OCC. So Carlos, if you can convey our thanks yet again to Paula and João and colleagues. It has been really fantastic. Yeah, we look forward to being here again. And I think with that, we are at the close. So great job, everyone. So we break for coffee, and then if the members can come back in again at 11, and we will have the in-camera session, and then lunch is available in the usual place at midday. So thank you. Great job.